I was raised by the Crown Prince's side since I was 7 years old. I merely served as his maid and study attendant until the Crown Prince was to marry the following month, and the Empress Dowager hurriedly sent me to his bed to teach him through personal experience and guide him into adulthood. Having acquired a taste for pleasure, he never let me rest for a single moment until the Crown Princess married into the Eastern Palace. On the day I was diagnosed with pregnancy, I ran to find the Crown Prince in high spirits, only to hear the Crown Princess discussing with him.
That bedchamber maid is quite pleasing. It would be good to take her as a concubine to help propagate the royal lineage.
But the Crown Prince sneered.
No need for something I've already grown tired of playing with. It would be better to give her away to father's head eunuch.
Standing outside the study door, I stood frozen for a long while, until I felt the warmth of tears on the back of my hand. Only then did I realize my hand was still absurdly resting on my lower abdomen. I remembered now. I had originally intended to tell the Crown Prince the news of my pregnancy. But does this child still have the blessing to come into this world? Wiping away my tears, I was about to turn around when suddenly Qian'er, a maid close to me, came running over.
Qian'er, I haven't seen you all morning. Manager Zhang said you went to see a doctor. What illness do you have?
The study suddenly fell silent, followed by the sound of the Crown Prince's hurried footsteps coming out. Seeing me, he coughed slightly. I don't know if it was an illusion, but I seemed to catch a fleeting moment of guilt in his eyes.
Qian'er, are you sick?
As he spoke, he reached out to touch my forehead. My body trembled slightly, and then I felt both ashamed and disgusted. That entire month of intimate favor had made it so that every time I had such slight physical contact with him now, I would react to it. I took half a step back and said in a low voice, "This servant is fine. It is just that the weather has grown hot, and I have a slight heat stroke. That is why I went to the doctor to get some medicine." The Crown Prince nodded.
How long have you been standing at the door? Did you come to see me for something?
I lowered my head, quietly looking at my lower abdomen. After a long pause, I looked up and forced a smile. The kitchen made some new summer snacks. I wanted to come and ask if you and the Crown Princess would like to try some, but I bumped into Qian'er just as I reached the door. Qian'er gave a silly smile. The Crown Prince also relaxed.
Oh, I see. Just let the kitchen staff come and ask themselves. Why trouble yourself to walk back and forth? The weather is getting hot indeed. Manny and the manor have fallen ill from the heat. If you are not feeling well, it is fine to ask the manager for a couple of weeks off. Just say I approved it.
The Crown Prince smiled at me, his expression gentle, just as he had been with me in bed. He said he pitied me and loved me. He said even after the Crown Princess married in, and even with 3,000 beauties in the future, I, a mere maid, would always be the only one in his heart. At that time, I lay sweetly in his arms, looking into his affectionate eyes, and believed all of his vows. At this moment, I finally couldn't help but ask him with a trembling voice, "Your Highness, actually, I wanted to ask you, have you decided on my future place?" The Crown Prince and I could be considered childhood sweethearts. When I was 7, I started working in the Empress's palace with my mother. Since I was of a similar age to the Crown Prince, I became both his maid and his study companion. When he went to study, I held the umbrella and carried his books, waiting under the scorching sun. When he was lazy, I wrote and copied scriptures for him, completing his homework overnight. We also enjoyed flowers, flew kites, and caught crickets together. Moreover, during the countless times he was punished by the Emperor, I would hold him, wipe his tears, and comfort him. That was how we grew up together. On the day the Crown Prince established his own residence, he begged the Empress to let him take me along too, making me the head maid of his manor. Originally, I had no romantic feelings for the Crown Prince, even with the bond of growing up together. Even though I was the only woman he brought with him from the Empress's palace, he was ultimately the master, and I was the servant, until a little over a month ago, when the Emperor bestowed upon him a marriage with the Chancellor's daughter. That night, the Empress came to the manor, and quietly asked the Crown Prince a few questions. He instantly blushed.
You are already such a grown man. Yet, you still know nothing of such matters. Could it be that in this manor, there isn't a single maid you fancy?
The Crown Prince looked up at me, then quickly averted his eyes. Though it was only for a brief moment, I did not miss the deep affection burning in his eyes. At that moment, I suddenly understood, and my own face flushed red.
Qian'er, Qian'er.
The Crown Prince's voice pulled me back to reality. He had just brushed off my question, saying only that he would take me back to the servants' quarters first. All along the way to the servants' quarters, many of the maids cast envious looks at me. In the past, when faced with those looks, I would feel a secret sense of pride, especially during this past month. Even though we were all maids, I always felt that I was somewhat different from them. It wasn't until today that I had a ridiculous awakening. How was I any different? I was just like them. Merely an object. In fact, I was even more laughable, a plaything he had already grown tired of. As we reached the front of the servants' quarters, the Crown Prince finally stopped and smiled at me.
Qian'er, do you still remember that day I played too rough with you and broke your wooden hairpin? You were so cross with me. I told you I would make it up to you with a new one. Come, Do you like it?
I did not reach out to take it. He patted my head helplessly and tried to slide it directly into my hair. I raised my head slightly and asked him in a calm voice, "Your Highness, are you really going to give me to Eunuch Xie?" The gold hairpin suddenly fell to the ground. Perhaps he would ask me in a panic when I had overheard those words of his. Perhaps he would use his status as the crown prince to force me to obey his arrangement. Perhaps he would brush it off once again, delaying it for a few days before letting the crown princess break the news to me. None of the above happened. Because at this moment, the crown prince only said with a hurt look on his face,
My good Qian'er, please help me. Who told that eunuch to lay his eyes on you when we went to the palace banquet last time?
In an instant, my entire body went cold. I could hardly believe that these words came from the mouth of the young man I grew up with. Just because of this, he was going to sell me out. Seeing that I remained silent, the crown prince hugged me again, muttering continuously, my good Qian'er, my good Qian'er. Just like every time in the past, when he wanted me to do something for him, he would act spoiled and refuse to let go. Every single time, my heart would soften completely, feeling that even if he wanted me to go through fire and water for him, I would be willing. But at this very instant, I made up my mind. I had to escape. I wanted to take the child in my belly and run far away, to the ends of the earth, where no one could ever find us. My decision to escape was by no means an impulse of the moment. I was not one of those foolishly loyal servants. I did not want to become a companion to a eunuch, and even less did I want to carry the child of the man I once adored, only to be given away by him for his own benefit. Besides, based on common knowledge, any eunuch who could reach the position of chief eunuch was bound to be old, ugly, insidious, and malicious, lacking their manhood. Their minds were even more twisted, and they enjoyed tormenting the palace maids who were paired with them by any means in private. I had heard that Eunuch Xie had also served in the Eastern Depot for a period of time, making his methods of torture all the more terrifying. I quietly looked at the crown prince, who was still talking endlessly before me, but my mind was incredibly clear. After all these years, I had managed to save some silver banknotes, which would be enough for me to find a quiet place. Even without working, I could live comfortably without worry for a few years. Since I am now the crown prince's woman, the estate managers usually turn a blind eye to my actions. I only need to wait 2 days. When the crown prince and crown princess leave for the royal hunt, I will take the chance to slip out of the estate, rent a carriage, and run far away. The crown prince was still coaxing me incessantly.
Qian'er, you know this as well. Even though I am the crown prince, father has always favored my third brother, who was raised by consort D. He always scolds me, saying I lack his literary and martial skills. Eunuch Xie is currently the favorite in front of father. With his help, my position on the throne will be more secure. When I ascend the throne in the future, I will definitely deal with the eunuch and bring you back. At that time, even making you the empress is not out of the question.
I closed my eyes. How ridiculous. No wonder His Majesty has always looked down on Xiaotian. He can't even tell a lie properly. That dodging gaze of his makes the lie obvious at a glance. Yet, in the past I actually liked this aspect of him. Living in this treacherous royal palace, he seemed pure and untainted, like a lotus rising from the mud. Just as I was about to say something, to brush him off, there was a slight stir in my belly. Suddenly, I couldn't help but retch aloud. The crown prince's expression changed. I wondered if he had sensed something. His pupils trembled for a moment, and he looked toward my stomach.
Qian'er, what is wrong with you?
Should I tell him about my pregnancy? The thought flashed for only an instant. Before I quickly dismissed it, I knew better than anyone that the crown princess would never allow me to give birth to the eldest child, even if she had just proposed to the crown prince to take me as a concubine. It was merely a tactical retreat to gain ground later. Everyone said this daughter of the prime minister was beautiful and generous. Back then, I had also naively hoped for that, hoping that once things settled down between her and the crown prince, my promotion to concubine would not cause any waves. But on the second day after the crown princess entered the estate, she singled me out from a group of maids to serve her personally. I looked at the crown prince hesitantly, but he happened to turn his head away. He seemed not to notice. When I brought the tea over to the crown princess, she took half a sip and suddenly threw the teacup right at my face.
Are you trying to scald me to death, you wench?
I instinctively closed my eyes, feeling the stinging pain of her finger guard scratching my cheek.
Are you all right, Qian'er?
He was about to step forward to check on me, but the crown princess blinked innocently and suddenly looked as if she had just realized something. Oh, I yawned.
Is she your bedchamber maid?
Tears immediately welled up in her eyes.
I didn't know. I'm sorry, my lord. I didn't do it on purpose.
Ruyun, don't cry.
The crown prince panicked and quickly lowered his head to comfort her.
She is just a maid after all. If you want to punish her, then punish her.
Dear sister, blame my ignorance. Look at you, dressed just like any ordinary maid. I really couldn't tell. You served the crown prince too. Had I known sooner, how could I have?
She warmly held my hand and spoke softly. The crown prince's eyes were filled with relief and gratification.
Ruyun marrying you is truly my good fortune.
No one cared about the bruise on my face from being struck, and even less did anyone care that the tea was clearly lukewarm. How could the crown princess say it was scalding? When I returned to the servants' quarters to sleep that night, I heard the other maids ridiculing me.
She climbed into the crown prince's bed and really thought she was a master now. Look, now that the real master is here, isn't she still lying on this shared bunk with us? Her clothes and accessories are just like ours too. The crown prince hasn't even rewarded her with a single item. If you ask me, the crown prince just sees her as someone easy to use.
All right, the lights are out. Why are you still gossiping here?
The one who interrupted them was Qian'er. Back then, only she stood up to defend me as always. Just like at this very moment, she rushed in a panic and said,
Qian'er, I went to ask Dr. Chen. You are actually pregnant.
I quickly covered her mouth. In the afternoon, I had only told the crown prince that I had eaten something indigestible at lunch, keeping my pregnancy a secret. The crown princess would never allow me to give birth to this child. It was just that I had previously been foolish enough to think that if I only told the crown prince about the pregnancy, he would at least help find a house where I could give birth to the child in secret. That was until today, when I overheard the conversation between the husband and wife. I looked at Qian'er pleadingly. Good sister, please do not speak a word of this.
For such a major matter, even if you do not tell the crown princess, you should at least tell the crown prince. No, let's just go straight to Her Majesty the Empress. Qian'er, Her Majesty the Empress cannot possibly reject her eldest grandson.
No need, really. There is no need. I have already made up my mind to leave this place. However, escaping the crown prince's manor was a major undertaking. After all, my indenture contract was still in the hands of my masters. For this reason, I could only keep Qian'er in the dark for now.
Qian'er, you and I are closest in this manner. There is no way I can just leave you to fend for yourself.
During the night, I shed tears in silence. Qian'er seemed to notice. She reached out to hug me from behind and gently patted my back. Why had I never realized before that her embrace was so much warmer than Xiao Tian's? I knew Qian'er was good to me because she had a younger sister who was close to my age. When they were young, because there was not enough money for their brother's schooling, she and her sister were sold to two different households, since I was of a similar age to her sister and perhaps shared some resemblance. When she first entered the crown prince's manor and saw me, she repeatedly verified my place of origin and birth date. When she realized I was indeed not her sister, a flash of regret crossed her eyes, but the event that happened next caught me completely off guard. Qian'er died. When I heard the news, I could not process it at all. I stood frozen in place, the scorching sunlight making my vision flicker for a moment. Once again, word by word, I asked the servant who had come to deliver the news. Who did you say died?
My dear sister, didn't you hear me? It is Qian'er, the same Qian'er you've always been so close to.
My vision went black, and I fainted dead away. When I woke up again, I still felt as if I were in a dream. Qian'er was dead, yet the general attitude in the estate was one of indifference. After all, she was just a maid who had died. Only I went around asking question after question, bribing one person after another, until I finally found the steward who was said to have buried her that day. Where on earth is Qian'er's body buried?
Miss Qian'er, just let it go.
The steward said with a look of difficulty.
That girl was foolish too, for some reason. She suddenly barged into the hunting grounds, where the masters were hunting. As ill luck would have it, she was mauled by wild beasts. We all saw the body. It was barely recognizable. Fearing it would offend the master's eyes, we just found a random spot in the nearby woods to bury her.
The hunting grounds. How could I not understand now? We handmaidens usually don't have access to the palace, and Her Majesty the Empress rarely steps outside either. So, Qian'er must have wanted to use the opportunity of the Empress and the Crown Prince going hunting to report to the Empress about my pregnancy. That was how she met her unfortunate. At first, the steward refused to tell me where Qian'er was buried. I pulled out banknotes from my purse, one after another, making it clear that I would go to pay my respects no matter what. If you won't take these, I said, I'll just take them and ask someone else. Only then did the steward sigh and give me the location. I headed straight west, walking on foot for several hours, until I reached a desolate wilderness. There, no one had even set up a gravestone for her. There was only a mound of raised earth, but I knew my sister Qian'er was inside. I held back my tears, knelt down, and frantically dug at the soil with my bare hands. My hands became covered in mud and blood, until I finally felt her face, and then her body.
She had bad luck. She was eaten by wild beasts. We all saw it. She was barely recognizable as human.
No. Her body was intact. Only her clothes were in tatters, and her body was covered in whip marks. Qian'er. She was beaten to death, suppressing my heartache. I gently closed Qian'er's eyes with my hand. I didn't know who beat Qian'er to death, but I was absolutely certain that the Crown Prince's manor was behind it. Returning to the manor in a daze, I locked myself in my room and wept bitterly. I didn't know how long I cried before finally falling asleep in a stupor. The next morning, I snapped my eyes open and climbed out of bed. I couldn't waste any more time. I had to avenge Qian'er. Therefore, I had to give up my plan to run away. I went to the Crown Prince's. I will tell him that I was willing to be his tool and marry Eunuch Xie. Upon hearing this, the Crown Prince was clearly surprised.
Are you truly willing?
Yes, as long as your highness needs me. This servant is willing to do anything for you. The Crown Prince was overjoyed.
Qian'er, you truly are my good Qian'er. I haven't doted on you in vain.
Looking at his hypocritical face, I felt a wave of disgust in my heart, but on the surface, I still acted gentle and obedient. Your Highness, when you ascend the throne, you must not forget about me.
Qian'er, don't worry. When the time comes, I will definitely get rid of that eunuch and bring you back to my side.
As for the Crown Prince's words, I wouldn't believe a single word anymore. The Crown Prince's manor began preparing for my wedding. A companion marriage between a maid and a eunuch normally wouldn't be celebrated so grandly, but since Eunuch Xie was such a favorite before His Majesty, the scale of his companion marriage ceremony would never be lacking. The manor was decorated with lanterns and colored banners, and Eunuch Xie even sent people to deliver a custom wedding gown for me. The Crown Princess smiled and said,
Qian'er, Eunuch Xie, personally sent people to make this wedding gown. Even though he is just he really does care about you.
I took a glance at them. The wedding gown was embroidered with twin lotus flowers on a single stalk using gold thread. It did look gorgeous and carefully crafted. The night before the wedding, wearing the wedding gown, I looked at myself in the mirror. The person in the mirror had bright eyes, white teeth, and skin as smooth as jade. She could indeed be considered a beauty. Once, I also had the dream of wearing a wedding gown, a grand dowry stretching for miles, to marry the man I loved. But unfortunately, when the day finally came for me to wear such a beautiful wedding gown, it was only to serve as a tool. Just as I was about to take off the wedding gown, the Crown Prince suddenly barged in. I was startled and quickly stood up to look at him. I saw his face was flushed, and he smelled heavily of alcohol, appearing to have drunk a lot. He suddenly hugged me close, mumbling my name incoherently.
Qian'er, are you really going to marry him?
I quietly looked at him. You were the one who said it. You were the one who wanted to send me away.
I didn't want to either. It is the Empress mother and the Crown Princess. They all said it would be better to give you to that eunuch. You know, I do love you.
The Crown Prince said as he kissed my neck wildly. No, you cannot. The Crown Prince grabbed my arms, his breathing heavy and rapid. I struggled with all my might. Your Highness, I have taken medicine. My body is extremely weak right now. I cannot engage in such matters with you at this moment. The drunken look in the Crown Prince's eyes gradually cleared.
What medicine?
Naturally, it is medicine to terminate the pregnancy. Your Highness, could it be that you expected me to marry Eunuch Xie with a heavily pregnant belly? The Crown Prince's eyes widened, his face turning deathly pale. As he stared at me in disbelief, the Crown Prince froze for a moment, his eyes gradually turning red. With a hoarse, anguished voice, he said,
Qian'er, why are you doing this to me? You are blaming me, aren't you? You feel I shouldn't have given you away, so you are punishing me.
I reached out and gently caressed the Crown Prince's face. Your Highness overthinks things. This servant had no such thoughts. This servant truly loves you and wishes to help you secure the throne. That is why I gave up this child.
Qian'er, I truly love you as well. In the future, we will surely have other children. For now, bear with it at that eunuch's place.
But in my heart, there was only a cold sneer. Truly love me. If he truly loved me, how could he possibly give me away to another man? If he truly loved me, upon learning of my miscarriage, aside from his heartache and anger, his primary focus was still on persuading me to bear with things at the eunuch's place. Indeed, in Xiao Tian's heart, power and interest ultimately triumph over all else. And now, all I can think about is how to use Eunuch Xie's hand to uncover the truth behind Qian'er's death. The next day, I was woken up early by the maid to do my hair and makeup and prepare for the wedding. The Crown Princess also made a rare appearance, bringing with her a wedding gift, a jade ruyi scepter.
Qian'er, from now on you belong to Eunuch Xie. I didn't have much to give, but this jade ruyi scepter is quite practical. Make sure you accept it graciously.
The Crown Princess said with a beaming smile. Many of the maids around her covered their mouths and snickered. How could I not understand? The Crown Princess was humiliating me. Marrying a eunuch meant I would likely be toyed with by that castrated man using such an object in the future. But I couldn't be bothered to argue with her anymore. This jade ruyi scepter looked highly valuable. Selling it would fetch a decent amount of money, so I accepted it with a smile. Thank you, Crown Princess. The Crown Princess seemingly didn't expect me to be so calm. A look of disdain crossed her face, and she said nothing more. Once everything was ready, I was covered with a red bridal veil, supported by the attendants. I stepped into the bridal sedan chair. The journey. My mind was in a flurry of thoughts, my heart filled with panic and fear. But things have come to this, and there is no turning back for me now. Eunuch Xie is currently the most favored eunuch before His Majesty. This man's reputation precedes him, but I have never met him, nor do I know what kind of person he truly is. Since a marriage between a palace maid and a eunuch is not an official wedding after all. After being sent to his mansion, only a few servants led me to perform the bowing ceremony with him, and then I entered the bridal chamber with him, sitting on the bed in the bridal chamber. I felt as if this were all a dream, my hands sweating from sheer nervousness.
Qian'er,
This was the first time I had heard Eunuch Xie's voice. He let out a soft chuckle.
why are you sitting there so still? Are you expecting me to come over and serve you?
This servant wouldn't dare.
Humph, wouldn't dare. Then lift your bridal veil yourself and come serve me some wine.
Grit my teeth. I lifted the veil myself, only to freeze slightly. I was slightly startled. To my surprise, Eunuch Xie was so young. He looked to be only in his early 20s, with a face as fair as polished jade, his eyes bright as stars. He looked nothing like the elderly eunuch I had imagined. Eunuch Xie glanced sideways at me. What is it? Sitting there refusing to move again. I snapped out of it, showing an embarrassed expression. I quickly walked over in a few steps and poured wine for him. Please, Eunuch Xie. He looked at me, and as he took the wine cup from my hand, his thumb brushed lightly against the back of my hand. A slight shiver ran through my entire body. Eunuch Xie took a sip of the wine and said calmly,
Xie Ziyuan.
Could this be his given name? But why was he telling me this? I recalled that I seem to have heard that some eunuchs dislike being called eunuch in private. With a sudden realization, I said, this servant understands, Eunuch Xie. Xie Ziyuan slammed his wine cup onto the table.
Since you belong to me now, just call me by my name. Acting all distant and reluctant. Who are you putting on this display of coyness for?
I shuddered once more, almost falling to my knees to beg him for mercy. I hurriedly said, this servant is not reluctant. This servant understands. I already belong to you, Lord Xie Ziyuan. Xie Ziyuan clicked his tongue. The anger on his face grew even more intense. He stood up abruptly. When I tried to help him undress, he pushed me away as well. He took off his own clothes and just went to bed and lay down like that. After hesitating for a moment, I cautiously got into bed too. The first night passed by uneventfully, like that. The next day, when I woke up, Xie Ziyuan had already gone out. For a period of time after that, my life was actually quite leisurely. Since I had entered the palace, I no longer had to serve as a maid in the crown prince's estate. I didn't have any other duties for the time being, so I had nothing to do all day and felt a bit suffocated. That day, I accidentally noticed a pile of clothes that Xie Ziyuan had changed out of, so I took them to wash for him. After Xie Ziyuan came back and found the clothes hanging out to dry in the courtyard, his face instantly darkened.
Who told you to wash clothes?
I was taken aback for a moment. What is happening?
Don't do this kind of servant's work casually in the future.
But this kind of servant's work is all I know how to do, I whispered. Xie Ziyuan pursed his lips, seeming to be angry. Just as I was feeling a bit scared, I suddenly heard him let out a helpless sigh.
Forget it. Do whatever you want to do.
How can this man be so moody? Lord Xie, I have nothing to do right now. I wonder when you will arrange a duty for me. I asked cautiously.
Just rest for now. I will make arrangements in a while.
I nodded and had no choice but to go back to my room. As I sat by the window in utter boredom, I suddenly remembered that the gifts sent by the guests had not yet been put away into the storeroom of Xie Ziyuan's residence. At the thought of that jade ruyi sent by the crown princess, I instantly blushed. In a flurry, I opened the chest containing those gifts. After rummaging for a long time, I finally found the jade ruyi I had intentionally buried at the bottom. Just as I hid it inside my sleeve, the door suddenly opened. Lord Xie quietly looked at the open mahogany chests scattered across the floor, and then at me. I gave an awkward smile and made up an excuse. I was just checking things over. He remained silent for a moment, then suddenly said,
I briefly glanced at the gift list. There aren't many valuable items in there. If you want them, just take them all for your personal collection. Why act so shiftily?
No, that is not what I meant. I'm fine. I hastily explained. Lord Xie looked at me, somewhat puzzled.
Then what do you mean?
I bit my lip and had no choice but to tell the truth. The crown princess and I have always had friction. She sent something very embarrassing. I was afraid you'd be upset if you saw it. Lord Xie raised an eyebrow.
What embarrassing gift? Bring it here and let me see.
Bracing myself, I pulled out the jade ruyi and handed it to him. Lord Xie stared at it in confusion for a long while, before finally seeming to realize what it was. His eyes curved, and he suddenly burst into laughter. I was slightly dazed, never expecting that he could look so beautiful when he smiled. Perhaps noticing that my eyes were fixed on his face, Lord Xie raised an eyebrow and said,
What is wrong?
Stop laughing. Hurry up and put that thing down. Once Lord Xie had laughed his fill, he casually tossed the jade ruyi into my arms. Flustered, I hid it back in my sleeve, intending to find someone to sell it off later. Lord Xie smiled again, and suddenly said,
During the morning court session today, I even spoke up for your crown prince. He was very grateful to me.
I uttered a soft assent, saying nothing more. Seeing this, Xie Ziyuan leaned in close to me, staring into my eyes, and said,
Qian'er, I know you like the crown prince very much. Consider today my way of repaying him.
I looked at him, his face expressionless. Lord Xie, now that I belong to you, I will naturally remain loyal to you. As for anyone else, they have nothing to do with me.
Do they really have nothing to do with you?
I avoided his gaze and remained silent. Xie Ziyuan smiled slightly and dropped the subject. A few more days passed. Xie Ziyuan suddenly told me that he had arranged a post for me. I originally thought he would assign me to the kitchen or give me some easy work like gardening and weeding in the imperial garden. As the head eunuch, it wouldn't be difficult for him to place me in such spots, but I never expected. He actually said he was transferring me to serve in the inner palace. The inner palace had always been the most scheming and treacherous place in the capital, where one careless mistake could cost a person their life. Before avenging Qian'er, I certainly did not want to throw my life away for nothing. I looked at Xie Ziyuan with hesitation, hoping there was still room for negotiation, but he merely shrugged and said,
Noble Lady Chun is short of hands.
Noble Lady Chun. I knew of her. She had entered the palace through the imperial selection last year. After being favored by the emperor once, she was granted the title of noble lady. But since then, the emperor had never selected her name tablet to summon her again. I did not know why Xie Ziyuan wanted to send me to such an unfavored lady, but I did not dare to ask too many questions. I could only follow the young guiding eunuch on our way. Noble Lady Chun lived in the most remote palace building. I followed the young eunuch for a long walk. Before we finally arrived, the young eunuch went inside to announce my arrival. Before long, I was led inside, keeping my head down, not daring to look up, only hearing a gentle voice say,
Are you Qian'er?
Yes, your ladyship, I am.
Rise.
Thank you, your ladyship. I stood up and stole a glance at her. In an instant, my eyes widened. Noble Lady Chun had an oval face and almond eyes, delicate features, and while she wasn't a great beauty, she had the charming, gentle look of a girl next door. But none of this was the cause of my surprise, though. What shocked me was that her appearance was 70 to 80% similar to Qian'er's. Flustered, I quickly lowered my head, not daring to look again. Noticing my strange reaction, Noble Lady Chun asked,
What is happening?
I quickly shook my head. It is nothing, your ladyship. I am just a bit nervous to meet you. Hearing this, Noble Lady Chun smiled.
Why are you nervous? It is not as if I will eat you.
I raised my head, only to find a gentle smile on her face. Her gaze was soft, without a hint of malice. My heart instantly put at ease. Thank you, your ladyship. Noble Lady Chun looked at me and asked me some simple questions, such as my background and the skills I excelled at. I answered them one by one. Noble Lady Chun nodded, seemingly quite satisfied with me. I then gathered the courage to ask about the daily routine in her palace. She let out a sigh.
In my foxy palaces, I'm sure you must know as well. This place holds no real status, and usually there is nothing to do. Just take care of the basic cleaning and attending, and when you have free time, come and chat with me.
I nodded. This servant is more than willing to keep your ladyship company. After spending a few days at Noble Lady Chun's palace, did I realize that life here was much better than in the Crown Prince's estate. Noble Lady Chun had a gentle personality. She never beat or scolded the servants, and treated them very well. Every day, I was only responsible for her meals and daily routine. The rest of the time, I could move about freely. And besides, Noble Lady Chun's meals were much better than those of other palaces, and the servants had meat with every meal. I began to understand that Eunuch Xie, by sending me to Noble Lady Chun, did not seem to want to make things difficult for me. He truly wanted to find a good place for me. Besides, Noble Lady Chun and Qian'er looked so remarkably alike. I couldn't help but wonder, does that mean that she was indeed Qian'er's younger sister? Here with Noble Lady Chun, I lived very comfortably. Before I knew it, over a month had already passed. Yet, whenever I saw Noble Lady Chun's face so similar to Qian'er's, I would always lose myself in thought. Perhaps she misunderstood something. For one day, Noble Lady Chun suddenly comforted me, saying,
Qian'er, if you are feeling homesick or anything, I can give you a couple of days off.
I quickly shook my head. Your ladyship, this servant's mother passed away when I was a child. I have no family now. Accompanying you is enough for me. Noble Lady Chun looked at me and suddenly let out a sigh.
But in truth, I also...
She pursed her lips, seemingly hesitant about whether she should speak. Meeting my inquiring gaze, she finally smiled.
I don't mind telling you this. Actually, I am only an adopted daughter in my family. Regarding my biological family, I have forgotten almost everything. I only remember having an older sister who was very good to me.
My heart shook. I was basically certain now she was Qian'er's biological sister. But should I tell her the news of Qian'er's death? I thought about it for a moment and shook my head. After all, Noble Lady Chun is not favored in the palace right now. She is alone and without support, which is already pitiful enough. How could I bear to make her suffer such pain? But even if I cannot tell her the truth now, I can still help her. The next day, I went out of the palace to find Xie Ziyuan to thank him for transferring me to Noble Lady Chun. Xie Ziyuan smiled and said nothing. I hesitated for a moment, then spoke to him again. Your Highness, can you think of a way to help Noble Lady Chun gain the Emperor's favor? Xie Ziyuan frowned slightly.
Qian'er, you should know. that a master's status has nothing to do with the servant's standing. Someone unlike noble Lady Chun, though not favored, at least keeps her servants away from the harem struggles. But once she falls into the fight for power and favor, you, as her maid, might not escape unscathed.
I know all of that. It is just that I need his power. Moreover, noble Lady Chun is very good to me, and I truly want to help her win the Emperor's favor. That way, her life can be a bit easier. Xie Ziyuan looked at me, seemingly perplexed.
Just why is that?
I'm sorry. I cannot say right now. Xie Ziyuan nodded, thoughtfully. After a long pause, he finally spoke.
I can think of a way, but how are you going to repay me?
I thought about it for a moment. I will work hard to do the laundry and cook, and do the housework, so that you feel comfortable and relaxed every day you return home.
Just like that?
I looked at him, somewhat confused. Then what else do you want? Xie Ziyuan leaned in close to me and pointed to his own cheek. I was taken aback for a moment.
Give me a kiss, and I'll agree to it.
Eunuch Xie looked at me with a half-smile. Xie Ziyuan frowned slightly.
What, you don't want to? Are you disdaining me for being a eunuch again?
I wouldn't dare. I hesitated for a moment, but still stood on my tiptoes and planted a gentle peck on his cheek. Only then did Xie Ziyuan smile with satisfaction. He looked at me, his eyes deep and intense.
Don't worry. This matter, I will find a way.
My cheeks flushed crimson. I didn't dare to look at him, my heart pounding wildly, as if it were about to leap out of my chest. Thank you, Lord Xie. I will head back first. Leaving behind these words, I fled the scene as if escaping. Xie Ziyuan indeed kept his word. Not long after, noble Lady Chun's name tablet was selected by the Emperor. Early the next morning, after noble Lady Chun returned to Fuxi Palace, quite a few people carried in gifts bestowed by the Emperor. Everyone throughout the palace was incredibly excited. Everyone could feel that our mistress was finally going to see her hard times end. One day, full of excitement, I crossed paths with Xie Ziyuan by chance in the Imperial Garden. I hurriedly expressed my gratitude to him, but he merely smiled.
Are you free? Then walk with me for a bit.
I was taken aback for a moment, and then replied, very well. As Xie Ziyuan and I walked through the Imperial Garden together, maidservants would occasionally pass by. The way they looked at us carried a hint of playfulness. I felt a bit embarrassed, and hesitated over whether I should keep my distance from him. But Xie Ziyuan suddenly stopped in his tracks. He glanced at the blooming flowers nearby, then casually plucked one, and tucked it into my hair.
It looks beautiful.
He looked at me, smiling gently. My ears flushed red, and my body instantly froze. What are you doing?
Nothing much. I just wanted to give you a flower. Why give me a flower for no reason? Can't I give you a flower without a reason? Privately speaking, you are considered my wife.
Flustered by his gaze, I lowered my head and walked forward. He quickly caught up with me and took my hand and said with a smile,
You're blushing. Are you shy?
I touched my burning cheeks, feeling a bit dazed. It wasn't that I hadn't noticed. Lately, between Xie Ziyuan and me, things had become increasingly intimate. He had never forced me to do anything. Seeing how nervous I had been these past few days, he had even shrugged and gone to sleep in the study. Only, I originally thought that I would spend my entire life, would be spent living for the crown prince. However, but now, I have met someone else. Even though he is merely a eunuch, he brings me warmth and makes my heart flutter. I do not even know when I first started having these feelings for him.
Qian'er.
Just as I was thinking this, a familiar voice suddenly called out from behind me. The man walked briskly toward me, his face turning grim. It was the crown prince, Xiaotian. Xie Ziyuan shielded me behind his back and said calmly,
What a coincidence to run into your highness here.
The crown prince stared at him coldly.
Eunuch Xie. I came here specifically to find Qian'er.
To find Qian'er.
I wonder what business your highness has with Qian'er.
The crown prince gritted his teeth.
This is between her and me. I must trouble Eunuch Xie to excuse himself for a moment.
Xie Ziyuan curled his lips into a smile.
Qian'er is my woman now. Everything regarding her naturally concerns me as well.
The crown prince's hands, hanging at his sides, clenched into tight fists. Suppressing his anger, he stared at Xie Ziyuan.
She was originally a maid in my estate, and she is my woman.
Your highness, you seem to have forgotten that you were the one who personally gave Qian'er to me.
The crown prince ground his teeth in anger. Yet, he did not dare to truly unleash his fury upon Xie Ziyuan. He forced a smile and looked at me.
Qian'er, come here. I have something to say to you.
But I have nothing to say to you. Why must you force someone against her will? The crown prince looked at me. His eyes were filled with disbelief.
Qian'er, you.
I burst out laughing, my laughter dripping with mockery. Your highness, wasn't it you who gave me to Eunuch Xie? The crown prince fell silent, his hand frozen mid-air, unable to bring it down for the longest time. Not long ago, noble Lady Chun was diagnosed with pregnancy. The emperor was overjoyed and immediately promoted her to the rank of consort. Consort Chun knew full well that Xie Ziyuan had helped her win this favor. While she couldn't thank him openly, she sent me many gifts in private. Shortly after, I heard that the crown prince had recently taken a new side consort. Rumor had it that she bore a striking resemblance to me. He closed his eyes. The gruesome image of Pinger's death flashed in my mind again. I didn't die, but someone else had died in my place. She was beaten to death. Then, who could have harbored such deep hatred against her? One thing was certain. She had indeed gone to the hunting ground that day. Then, I thought of the crown princess who looked as merciful as Guanyin, but possessed the heart of a viper. I recalled how she had constantly tormented and targeted me in private when I was at the estate. And another thing, the news of consecutive deaths coming from the crown prince's estate lately. I began to suspect more and more that Pinger's death was absolutely tied to the crown princess. For the next few days, I had been feeling utterly restless, as if something major was about to happen. In my initial deduction, all incriminating evidence seemed to point to the crown princess. After all, she could never tolerate the existence of the child in my womb. Thus, it was highly possible she silenced Pinger to cover up the truth. The more I thought about it, the more terrified I became. Shivers running down my spine. If the crown princess really was the one who killed Pinger, I would never let her get away with it. However, the next event that unfolded caught me completely off guard. One day, I happened to run into an acquaintance in the palace. Dr. Chen, who had treated me in the past. When he saw me, he looked somewhat surprised. He then pulled me aside and whispered,
Miss Qian'er, did your child, by any chance?
I looked at him and smiled bitterly. Dr. Chen, I guess it was not meant to be with that child. Thank you for going to the trouble of prescribing those fetal soothing medicines for me back then. Dr. Chen was someone who had seen his share of inner estate and palace struggles. There was no need to say anything more. He stroked his beard. He sighed.
I did not expect that even someone as noble as the crown prince could not protect his own child.
I felt a pang of sorrow in my heart, but I still told him the truth. His Highness was truly powerless in this matter. I had already miscarried before he even found out about my pregnancy. Hearing this, Dr. Chen was visibly taken aback.
What? But the crown prince must have known about your pregnancy long ago, miss.
My face was filled with shock. The crown prince knew I was pregnant.
Back then, when she came to ask me what illness I had diagnosed you with, I told her this good news. I also told her that your pregnancy was unstable and you needed to rest and nurture the fetus.
Upon hearing this, I felt as if struck by a bolt from the blue. When did he come looking for you?
Probably the day after I confirmed your pregnancy.
My head was buzzing. What did you say?
Miss Qian'er, I am just a physician. When the crown prince questioned me, I had no choice but to speak.
I took 2 steps back in horror. Dr. Chen's words made me feel as if I had fallen into an ice cave. The day after my pregnancy was confirmed, which means it was the day after I felt nauseous and vomited in front of the crown prince. So, he must have suspected it right away. I recalled the night before my wedding with Xie Ziyuan. The crown prince came to find me, trying to force himself on me. I told him that I had taken abortion medicine and lost his child. At that time, his eyes were filled with shock and pain, looking utterly incredulous. I thought, he really didn't know about my pregnancy, but in reality, he had known everything all along. He was just pretending not to know. My heart turned completely cold in an instant. The crown prince clearly knew I was pregnant, yet he pretended as if nothing was wrong, putting on an act in front of me. He could even calmly, in the days that followed, watch me suffer and watch me struggle. How could he be so incredibly heartless? Wait a minute. In an instant, another wave of goosebumps broke out all over me. I began to suspect that Pinger's death had everything to do with him. The next day, I took the initiative to find the crown prince after court. The crown prince was clearly somewhat surprised.
Qian'er, you.
Your Highness, I have some matters I would like to ask you about. I wonder if you have some time.
Yes, of course. Come with me.
He pulled me into a secluded rockery and eagerly began to touch me.
Qian'er, have you been doing well lately?
I nodded. I'm doing very well. Mr. Xie treats me very well. His face stiffened.
Qian'er, I know I've wronged you in this matter. But didn't we agree? I will win you back in the future. Why must you deliberately mock me every single time?
Your Highness, I do indeed have some questions I'd like to ask you.
What is it?
How exactly did Pinger die back then? The crown prince froze.
Qian'er, why are you suddenly asking about this?
She was my only friend in the manor. I want to find out the truth behind her death. The crown prince's eyes flickered with unease.
Wasn't that already explained? Back then, who knows what came over her? She suddenly wandered into the hunting grounds and was mauled to death by wild beasts.
Feigning shock and grief, I continued to press him. Was it really just wild beasts? What if someone with malicious intent took her life and then blamed it on wild beasts? After all, there were no witnesses.
Qian'er, don't overthink this. She was mauled by wild beasts. I saw it with my own eyes.
I stared at the crown prince in silence. He was lying. Qian'er was not mauled by wild beasts at all. I had seen the truth with my own eyes, and the reason he was lying was likely because he was directly responsible for Qian'er's death. Seeing me lost in thought, the crown prince cupped my face in his hands.
Qian'er, stop dwelling on these painful things. Think about our future instead. I heard that consort Chun, whom you serve, has been highly favored by father recently. Could you have her put in a good word for me in front of father?
A wave of intense revulsion surged within me. As things stand now, when I had just brought up someone he had killed, he showed neither remorse nor panic. He could even, with a clear conscience, continue to make demands of me. The crown prince pulled me into his embrace, coaxing me with sweet words. My heart was filled with a chilling desolation. Once, I had loved him so deeply, but now, I felt nothing but hatred for him. I had to find a way to destroy what he valued most. I would strip him of his position as crown prince. Only then would he receive the punishment he deserved. Your Highness, I will see what I can do. After saying this, I pulled my hand from his grasp and walked straight out of the rockery. The crown prince seemed about to chase after me, but then 2 maidservants passed by and noticed us. Only then did he straighten his robes and head in the opposite direction. Along the way, I kept pondering how a mere palace maid, like myself, could bring down the crown prince. Perhaps I could enlist consort Chun's help. The truth behind Qian'er's death was something she had to be told now. Even after returning home, I was still lost in thought, not even noticing when Xie Ziyuan came back. Seeing me like this, he seemed somewhat displeased. Without saying a word, he went straight to his study. I went over, knocked on the door, and asked him, "What is happening?" He gave me a cold look.
Nothing.
I was puzzled. Had this eunuch taken the wrong medicine today? For several days in a row, Xie Ziyuan ignored me completely. I finally couldn't take it anymore. One day, I brought him some pastries I had made myself with the imperial kitchen staff, and asked him, "Lord Xie, what on earth is wrong with you?"
Nothing is wrong with me. I merely heard that a certain someone went to see her old flame again and has been completely distracted ever since. It is just rather laughable.
I was taken aback for a moment, and it took me a while to realize. Could he actually be jealous? I couldn't help but want to laugh. His jealousy this time was truly baffling. After all I thought about all day was how to bring down the crown prince. Seeing me standing there alone in silence, Xie Ziyuan finally couldn't help himself. With a tense face, he sneered.
Xiaotian treated you like that, and you still can't let him go.
Huh.
What do you mean, huh? Don't tell me you still love him.
Xie Ziyuan's brow was tightly furrowed, looking extremely angry. I finally couldn't hold it in, and burst out laughing. Then, my laughter grew louder and louder. Your jealousy is really quite absurd. Xie Ziyuan, I only met with him to confirm one last thing.
Is it confirmed now?
Basically confirmed. Xie Ziyuan fell silent for a long moment.
Qian'er, if there is anything you want, or any revenge you desire, I can help you.
I shook my head. Thank you very much, Xie Ziyuan. But I want to handle this matter myself. Xie Ziyuan spoke no more. He just looked at me, his gaze complex. After a long silence, he sighed.
Since you have confirmed it, can you stop meeting with the crown prince in the future?
I looked at him, my heart skipping a beat, nodded. Xie Ziyuan's expression softened. At this moment, I finally realized that my feelings for him had also changed. It seemed that I had fallen in love with Xie Ziyuan. The next day, I went to see consort Chun and told her everything about Qian'er in great detail. After she finished listening, she stared blankly with her eyes wide open, remaining speechless for a long time. I asked with concern, "Consort Chun, are you all right?" These words seemed to finally pull her back to reality. She covered her face and wept bitterly. Her tears fell like pearls from a broken string.
Are you saying my sister, Xie?
I nodded. If my deduction is correct, it was the crown prince who killed Qian'er.
The crown prince.
He wanted to give me to Xie Ziyuan to trade for his support. So even after learning that I was pregnant, he continued to play dumb. But Qian'er thought the crown prince knew nothing. She believed that by telling him about my pregnancy, she could make him abandon the idea of giving me to Xie Ziyuan. As a result, to silence her, the crown prince sent someone to whip Qian'er to death and covered it up to the outside world, claiming she was mauled to death by wild beasts. Hearing this, consort Chun nearly collapsed from grief.
How can there be such a malicious person in this world? Xiaotian he.
I let out a sigh, my own eyes turning red. Your ladyship, the dead cannot be brought back to life. You must take care of yourself. How about this? Qian'er's soul in heaven will not find peace. Consort Chun leaned on my shoulder, crying like a child. A wave of intense sorrow surged in my heart, and I gently patted her back. Consort Chun cried so hard, she gasped for breath. And in the end, she actually fainted. In a flurry, I helped her onto the bed. After checking her pulse, the imperial physician said her fainting was caused by extreme grief and anger, and that she must get plenty of rest. I sat by the bedside, looking at her pale face, and couldn't help but regret a little whether I had spoken too directly today. Perhaps I should have chosen a more suitable time, but regretting now was of no use. But I didn't expect. When Consort Chun woke up, her fragile grief from earlier had vanished without a trace. She raised her head, quietly, and her eyes were filled with determination.
Qian'er, you only need to answer me one thing. Was my sister indeed murdered by Xiao Tian? You sought me out to tell me this, so I presume you have already resolved to avenge my sister, have you not?
Consort Chun fell silent for a moment. Finally, looking straight ahead, she said,
I know what must be done. Qian'er, I will help you, and you must also help me.
From that day on, Consort Chun and I were no longer just master and servant, but allies. Consort Chun was currently in high favor, and she would frequently whisper into the emperor's ear, praising how wonderful Consort D's third prince was, how capable and promising he was, and how he was far superior to the crown prince. The emperor had already disdained the crown prince for being too mediocre, and now he looked down on him even more. During the morning court session that day, the emperor once again, in front of all the civil and military officials, severely reprimanded the crown prince.
And to think you hold the noble title of crown prince, you are utterly mediocre, not even matching half of your third brother's capability. How can you be fit for great responsibility?
The crown prince knelt on the ground, trembling with fear, not daring to utter a word. The emperor glared at him.
If you still refuse to make progress, you might as well vacate the position of crown prince.
Hearing this, the crown prince's body shuddered. When he walked out of the great hall, he clenched both hands tightly into fists. One day, while I was sorting clothes at home, the crown prince suddenly barged in and forcibly dragged me to a lakeside.
Qian'er, why are you doing this?
The crown prince looked at me. His eyes were filled with rage. I don't know what you mean. I looked at the crown prince and said coldly,
It was you, wasn't it?
The crown prince stared into my eyes, gritting his teeth as he spoke.
You helped Consort Chun and Consort to scheme against me, trying to help my third brother steal my position as crown prince, didn't you?
I looked at him, finding it utterly laughable. Crown prince, do you still not understand why I did this? The crown prince's eyes flickered for a moment. Did you think I truly didn't know how Qian'er died? Hearing this, the crown prince's face paled.
Qian'er, what are you talking about? I didn't know.
You don't know? I looked at him and mocked. Your Highness, when you whipped Qian'er to death and carelessly threw her into the barren hills to be buried, did you ever think that a fool like me would go dig up her grave just to see with my own eyes how she died? A flash of panic crossed the crown prince's eyes.
Qian'er, listen to me. This had nothing to do with me. It was the crown princess who took matters into her own hands.
Your Highness, you don't need to say another word. I looked at him, my eyes filled with absolute disgust. I grew up with you, and I knew you lacked great talent and strategy, but at least I always believed you were a man who dared to take responsibility for his actions.
Qian'er, I know you hate me right now, but can't I make it up to you in the future? She was just a maid servant. Because of her, you actually colluded with Consort Chun and Consort De to plot against my throne.
Ina, what is the use of saying all this now? I truly never want to see you again. With that said, I turned and left. I did not see the crown prince following me. He stood behind me, quietly, with a cold gaze. Suddenly, a hand gave me a shove. I was caught off guard. My feet stumbled, and I was about to fall into the water. I let out a terrified scream, but in that very instant, a strong, large hand caught me by the waist. I turned around and saw Xie Ziyuan standing behind me. He ignored me for the moment, instead turning to squint and look coldly at the crown prince.
What do you think you're doing?
The crown prince's face was deathly pale.
How very authoritative of you, Your Highness, daring to attempt murder in broad daylight.
Eunuch Xie, you must have misseen. I only saw Qian'er standing too close to the lake's edge and wanted to give her a hand, that is all.
Xie Ziyuan scoffed, took my hand, and pulled me away. I turned my head to look back at the crown prince. He was still standing in the same spot, staring at us without moving. What exactly happened just now? I was still in a daze.
The crown prince wanted to push you into the water to silence you forever.
Xie Ziyuan said indifferently. Were you watching from behind the entire time? Since when?
Since he pulled you out of my manor.
So you just watched me leave the manor with him? Didn't you tell me not to see him anymore?
I can confine your body. Could I really keep your heart? If you truly want to meet him in secret, I might prevent it once. But can I prevent it a second time?
But why? Xie Ziyuan fell silent. After a moment of silence, he continued walking forward. I looked at him, unable to resist asking again, emphasizing every word. Xie Ziyuan, why are you so good to me? He stopped in his tracks, looking down at me.
Do you really want to know?
I nodded. He fell silent for a moment, and said,
When we were young, we met once.
Xie Ziyuan looked at me, his gaze incredibly gentle. I was taken aback for a moment, somewhat dazed. When we were young. Did we meet? Xie Ziyuan gave a bitter smile.
If you can't remember, then let it be. After all, back then, your heart and eyes were probably filled only with your crown prince.
But I still kept my eyes fixed on his face, trying hard to remember. Finally, I remembered. Back then, in the imperial palace, I had saved a young eunuch who had been beaten half to death. Back then, he had just entered the palace and didn't know the rules, so he was often bullied by the other eunuchs. Seeing how pitiful he was, I would often give him something to eat. That young eunuch told me that in this lifetime, his greatest dream was to make something of himself and become a powerful official second only to one, but above tens of thousands. At that time, I smiled and encouraged him. As long as you survive and do not give up on your life, then anything is possible. Later, I heard that the little eunuch had been taken in as an adoptive son by a powerful head eunuch, who even brought him to the Eastern Depot. I stared at Xie Ziyuan in shock. That little eunuch, was you?
It is me. Back then, I was bullied by the other eunuchs and nearly lost the will to live. It was you who encouraged me to live on properly, only by surviving. Would I have the chance to avenge all those grudges?
I looked at him, feeling a bit embarrassed. I only said that in passing back then. I didn't expect you to actually remember it until now. Xie Ziyuan looked at me. His gaze was tender.
Qian'er, you may have just said it in passing, but to me, it was the greatest encouragement.
I looked at him and suddenly realized, does that mean he had felt this way about me since then? As for me, was so slow-witted that I only found out now. Xie Ziyuan also noticed my questioning gaze. His face flushed and remained silent. I couldn't help but ask, then why didn't you say so earlier? He let out a sigh.
I went to the Eastern Depot, and you left the Imperial Palace with the Crown Prince. So, I originally thought our paths would never cross again in this lifetime, but
Xie Ziyuan fell silent for a moment and slowly spoke.
At the banquet, I saw you again, and I couldn't help but keep my eyes on you. The Empress noticed my feelings. She said she could give you to me. In exchange, I had to work for her and the Crown Prince.
I froze for a moment. Are you saying it was the Empress who had you ask for me? He nodded. Xie Ziyuan looked at me, his expression solemn.
Qian'er, the Empress is not as kind and gentle as she appears on the surface.
Xie Ziyuan's words set off a tempest in my heart. Because I remembered, on the night of that banquet, the Emperor had arranged a marriage for the Crown Prince. That night, the Empress came to the Crown Prince's manor and hinted that the Crown Prince should take me. But why? Once I thought through all of this, a shiver ran down my spine. Xie Ziyuan looked at me.
Qian'er, you don't need to be anyone's maid. Just stay by my side. I will give you a good life.
I looked at Xie Ziyuan in surprise, unable to process it all for a moment. Seeing me like this, he sighed. Speak.
I knew. You still can't let go of the Crown Prince.
No. I've long since stopped caring about. He just tried to take my life. How could I still feel that way about him? Seeing my flustered and anxious state, Xie Ziyuan suddenly smiled. Only then did I realize he had deliberately baited me into saying those words. I looked at Xie Ziyuan helplessly and couldn't help but smile along with him. But in truth, how could I not have developed feelings for him? Xie Ziyuan treated me so incredibly well. How could I not feel it? But I am no longer the pure and innocent young maid I once was. I was pregnant with the Crown Prince's child, and I even wanted to use Xie Ziyuan. I feel so dirty. Right now, I only want to do everything in my power to drag the Crown Prince down with me. Other than that, I have no time, nor do I have the energy to think about love and romance. Seeing that I had fallen silent, the light in Xie Ziyuan's eyes dimmed, and he said no more. Afterward, we walked in silence, and the two of us slowly made our way back to the manor. The next day, I went to report for duty at Consort Chun's palace. Seeing that I was in low spirits and asked me what was wrong, I told her everything that had happened yesterday, including how the Empress had plotted against me. After listening to me, Consort Chun blinked in surprise and sighed, saying,
Qian'er. Actually, regarding the Empress, there are also many things I haven't told you, because I knew you had always been grateful to her and believed she was a kind person, so most of the time, I just assumed I was overthinking things.
Your ladyship, please tell me. I looked at her intently.
The Empress's schemes run incredibly deep.
Years ago, when I was first favored and made a noble lady, I too enjoyed boundless favor for a time. At that time, the Empress came to me, insisting that we shared a special bond, and called me her sister. When His Majesty took me on his southern tour, the Empress, to congratulate me, gifted me a new gown sent from the south. But on the very day of the tour, as I wore that gown, a dog suddenly rushed out, barking wildly, and gave His Majesty a terrible fright. The farmer nearby who kept the dog was arrested for his offense, and then he said, the dog was driven mad by the scent of the powder on me. Ever since that incident, His Majesty found me unlucky and distanced himself from me. Many of my close sister, concubines in the palace also kept dogs, and I visited them often. Yet no dog had ever gone mad before. I summoned an imperial physician for questioning, and only then did he help me discover that the source of the scent was not my face powder, but that dress. It had been scented with something that drives dogs wild. But by then, it was useless to explain things to His Majesty. Listening to her words, I felt a shudder of fear. The Empress's family background was inferior to many other concubines, yet she was able to sit securely on the Empress's throne. Perhaps she relied not just on the Emperor's favor, but also on her scheming mind. At this moment, I completely realized that perhaps from the very beginning, I was just a pawn in the Empress's hands. Once she discovered Xie Ziyuan fancied me, she used every means to exploit me to win him over. She sent me to the Crown Prince's bed, thereby severing any thought I had of leaving the Crown Prince's estate, forcing me to view myself as the Crown Prince's woman. Perhaps Ping'er's death was also her idea. After all, the Crown Prince was weak and simple by nature. At that time, he surely hadn't harbored any desire to kill. She feared Ping'er would leak the news of my pregnancy and ruin the Crown Prince's reputation. So she instigated the Crown Prince to commit murder to silence her. Thinking of this, a chill ran down my spine. If all of this were true, then the Empress's scheming mind was truly terrifying. While the two of us were talking, a sudden clamor arose outside. A young maid rushed in, crying out in panic.
Your ladyship, this is bad. The Crown Prince has rebelled.
What did you say?
Consort Chun looked at the palace maid before her and asked in shock.
The Crown Prince has led troops into the palace. The third prince has been killed, and Consort D has been killed as well. And now, the Emperor has also been drugged by him and is unconscious. I barely managed to sneak out. Your Highness, what should we do?
Consort Chun and I looked at each other, feeling completely chilled to the bone. But I didn't expect that the Crown Prince would actually go this far. Before we even had time to think of a plan, soon, a group of men rushed in, bound Consort Chun and me, and dragged us to the main hall. The Crown Prince sat upon the dragon throne.
This throne is finally mine.
The Empress also walked out and said with relief,
My good Qian'er, I have finally waited for this day.
Consort Chun and I were kept under house arrest together, watching them play out this drama of deep mother-son affection. The Crown Prince walked over, quietly.
Qian'er, although you betrayed me, I still remember my original promise. As long as you obediently apologize to me, I can still make you my consort.
I looked at him, feeling nothing but disgust. Your Highness, are you still putting on an act even now? The Crown Prince looked at me and suddenly burst into laughter.
Qian'er, why do you have such a look of resistance? Didn't you love me so much before? Surely you haven't actually fallen in love with that eunuch now, have you? Ha 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 ha.
I sneered. And what if I have? Hearing this, the Crown Prince's expression changed drastically.
What do you mean?
I looked at him, my eyes filled with ridicule. What I mean is, you are inferior to him in every way in my eyes. Why shouldn't I love him? The Crown Prince looked at me, gnashing her teeth.
How am I inferior to him? How dare you compare me to a mere eunuch like him?
Even if Xie Ziyuan is just a eunuch, he is still far better than you. The Crown Prince's face fell.
What did you say?
I'll talk. Even a eunuch is better than you. You can't even compare to a single finger of Xie Ziyuan's. The Crown Prince's face turned livid.
You actually dare compare me to a eunuch?
What is wrong with being a eunuch? Even a eunuch has more of a conscience than you, and is far more sincere to me than you are. The Crown Prince glared at me, gritting his teeth.
Qian'er, do you truly wish to humiliate me like this?
The Empress sneered from the side.
Qian'er, why throw such a childish tantrum here? You will soon be the Emperor. All the women under heaven will belong to you. You can have whichever one you desire. It is not up to this girl to decide anything.
Listening to the Empress's words, a glint flashed in the Crown Prince's eyes, curling his lips into a smirk. His hands began to move inappropriately over my body. I looked at him, in utter disbelief. Xiao Tian, this is the main hall, with so many people present.
So what? Who would dare to speak a word of this outside?
He was crazy. This man is absolutely insane. Right at that moment, a voice suddenly echoed from outside.
His Majesty the Emperor arrives!
I looked up. and saw Xie Ziyuan walking in, supporting the emperor. Everyone in the hall watched this scene in utter shock, unable to process it for a long time. The emperor looked at the crown prince coldly.
Crown Prince, you have truly disappointed me to the extreme.
The crown prince turned pale with fright.
Father, how can you?
Crown Prince, you fell into a trap.
The crown prince's face turned ashen, and he slumped onto the ground. So this, back on the day when the crown prince tried to push me into the water, Xie Ziyuan had already sensed that something was wrong. He made a decisive move, and immediately informed the emperor that the crown prince might be planning something soon. As a result, the emperor and Xie Ziyuan joined forces, turning the tables on him by staging this elaborate play, completely wiping out the crown prince's troops today. The crown prince and the empress were captured. They knelt on the ground, their eyes filled with utter despair. The crown prince was demoted to a commoner and imprisoned in the cold palace. The empress, deeply traumatized, passed away in grief shortly after. A few years later, the emperor also passed away. Xie Ziyuan and I supported Consort Chun's son to ascend the imperial throne. On the day the young emperor ascended the throne, Consort Chun looked at me with a smile and asked me what reward I wanted. Naturally, the more gold, silver, and treasures, the better. I joked.
In my eyes, no amount of wealth can compare to freedom.
I stared at Consort Chun in daze.
Qian'er, you are free. Leave the palace. Go and see the world beyond these palace walls for my sister and me.
I hugged her and wept bitterly. The next day, I packed my luggage, mounted the tall horse Consort Chun had prepared for me, and left through the main gate of the palace. Behind me, Xie Ziyuan stood on the city wall, silently watching me. I turned around and saw his lonely figure. Suddenly feeling a bit of heartache, I turned my horse around, rode to the base of the city wall, and called his name. But Xie Ziyuan turned his head away, pretending to look at the scenery. I let out a sigh and shouted up to him, "Xie Ziyuan, do you have anything else to say to me?" He remained silent for a moment. I shook my head.
I won't.
I nodded. Very well. Then I'm really leaving. With that said, I rode away. I had only gone a few steps when Xie Ziyuan's voice came from behind me.
Qian'er, wait a moment.
I quickly pulled on the reins and stopped. Not far away, Xie Ziyuan was walking quickly toward me.
You, where do you plan to go?
To wander to the ends of the earth and live a life of freedom. Xie Ziyuan remained silent for a very long time.
Can you take me with you?
I looked at him, feigning surprise. Doesn't Lord Xie aspire to be the most powerful eunuch, second only to one? Xie Ziyuan's face turned completely red.
That was my dream in the past. Since it has already been achieved, I want to have a different dream now.
Oh. Then what is your dream now? He fell silent for a moment, then said,
I want to wander to the ends of the earth with a certain little maid.
Suppressing my laughter, I asked, why do you want to roam the world with a little maidservant? He said helplessly,
Don't you already know? I've loved you since we were children.
Then what are you waiting for? Hurry up and get on the horse. He blinked in daze. Huh. If you don't want to, then forget it.
I do.
Xie Ziyuan hurriedly said. He hastily mounted the horse, sitting behind me, muttering discontentedly.
What kind of man sits behind a woman?
Hold on tight. I laughed, giving the whip a hard crack. The horse let out a long neigh and galloped away. All the gloom in my heart was swept away by the wind of freedom. From this day forward, only happiness surely awaits us in the future.